the heart and soul behind every business. Stories. Welcome to Business Story of the Week, hosted by me, Joshua Laurie. From setbacks to comebacks, from tragedies to triumphs, we inspire entrepreneurs through conversations that matter. Witness the magic that turns dreams into reality. Whether it's your career, business, or life, your success is always one story away. This is Business Story of the Week. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, folks, people, brothers and sisters out there. Welcome back to Business Story of the Week. I am your host, Joshua, and today's question is, how can advancing others lead to our own success and immortality? That is the keyword today that our guest is going to be bringing us today. Immortality. Dom Brightmon, positive thought catalyst, inspires others to advance in life and join the business of immortality through content creation. I love that concept, by the way. His mantra is advance others to advance yourself. Dom Brightmon, DTM, is a certified trainer with the Maxwell Leadership Team, best-selling author, and host of the Going North podcast, a podcast committed to featuring authors from around the world to promote the power of the written word and inspire listeners to publish books of their own. Dom, I am quite excited with this one. I know you have quite the story to tell us today, and of course, your perspective, your insight. I am loving the energy already. Dom, how are you doing? Thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, Josh, man, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it, man. Business story of the week, man. 52 weeks in a year, shoot. Feels like 52 weeks in a day these days.
That is true. 52 weeks. I mean, we're just doing what we can, right? Every day of the week, every day of the month. But Dom, today it is your day. It is your time to be here on the show. It's been quite the journey that you've gotten through as well, coming here on here today. Can you share us a little bit about becoming a certified trainer with the Maxwell Leadership Team and what inspired you to go on this path? But more than that, Dom, I want to know the origin story. You know, where did Dom come from? What's up? And did you always know you were going to go into this path? And did you always know you were going to be a podcaster? You'd be an author and everything. What is the story of Dom Brightmon?
Sure thing. Story is basically a church kid who found his confidence. I had a wonderful mom and
Wow.
a wonderful father, a father who was a veteran in the U.S. of A. Army
Wow.
82nd Airborne Division, decorated man, fought
Wow.
in both
Wow.
World War II and in the Korean War, had two combat jumps, decorated man. And my mother, she was highly educated, got a
Mhm.
master's degree in psychology and also teaching as well. And she was basically my first ever public speaking coach. And when the
Wow.
teenage years kicked in and good old puberty showed up, the voice
Mm.
decided to develop and folks are like,
Mhm.
"Hey, who the heck is that guy?" It's like, "Oh, yeah, that's just Dominic. Yeah, that's Mama. That's Ella and David's kids." Like, what for
Mhm.
real? And
Mhm.
they were like, "Oh shoot, like we gotta put him in plays and stuff." And did
Uh-huh,
church
uh-huh.
plays and had a public speaking class. And my
Wow.
last year in high school was able to get through that. Took one in college, got through that one. Then
Wow.
eventually joined Toastmasters International in my
Wow.
early 20s and still can't believe it's been 10 years now since I've been a
Oh my goodness.
Toastmaster officially and
Uh-huh.
really just polished the skill of public speaking
Mhm.
next to the power of being in a wonderful ecosystem of talent. Because the thing is, especially in the black community, probably not as strong as it is today, but still strong nonetheless, is that like with the black church, it's a powerful place to be, especially
Mhm.
because like that's really where the source is. Your family and friends are usually there,
Of
especially if
course.
you're heavy into it
Of
and
course.
things like that. And that's where my gift was discovered, and gifts are meant to be
Oh wow.
shared. So that's a little bit of the origin story.
Well, it's a fitting origin story for a superhero like name as yours, Dom Brightmon. Of course, I mean Dom. It's quite the story as well. You found your confidence. You got into public speaking, and then you got into Maxwell Leadership Team as a certified trainer. How did that go down? What was that like?
Yeah, it was actually, I'd say the seeds were planted at the end of 2012, where I basically found self help and leadership books. And that was one day when I had a meeting with my boss at the time. And there were some times where my personal life was showing up in my professional life. And one of the things
Mhm,
that she said that really stuck in my subconscious mind is that, hey, I'm going to be having some new staff members come in. And I
mhm,
held that job for about 5 years at the time. I was going to school full time, and they're going to be like,
mhm.
hey, folks going to be looking up to you as a leader because, hey, we kept you here for 5 years. It's like you didn't do anything stupid, so you got to know something there. And just that word leader popped up, and it led to
Mhm.
John Maxwell's book,
Wow, of
Five
course.
Levels of Leadership, and
Mhm.
just became a big fan of him, and still a big fan to this day. My favorite author of all time, and read
Wow.
a bunch of his books. And through Toastmasters, I met a fellow JMT certified coach who
Mhm.
actually mentioned that he has a certification program for those looking to speak and really add a major toolbox to their speaking, coaching, or leadership training business. And
Mhm.
it was a shiny penny for me at the time when I first heard about it. I'm like, all right, I think I'm gonna build myself up first and then invest in it later. And some delays happened, and
Mhm.
2019 eventually pressed the button and became a Maxwell Leadership Certified Coach. And I
Wow.
still haven't even tapped into everything that it has to offer. I
Wow.
kind of feel like the RPG character in a video
Right, right.
game that just got this
Mhm.
shiny new weapon or whatever, and just looking to take on the world and really just bring value. Because really, it's all about being people of value, adding
Right,
value
of
to other
course.
people, and in this case, I like to say unlocking the value in other people. Because if you're living and breathing, you have value, and it's
That's it.
always good to remind people of that. Because especially nowadays, depending on where you are in the world, people
Mm,
tend to forget their value. They feel like they don't
of
have any,
course.
but you definitely have value. And I've had great people that
Yes.
have discovered the value that I can help others
Mhm.
find and really unleash. And I just want to help others to do the same. So just paying
I
it
love that.
forward.
I love that. And of course, Dom, you are taking on the world in your own way. And like, even if you got this shiny new weapon, you got all these other weapons that you picked up along the way, and you are taking on that world. I mean, you also are the host of the Going North podcast, I understand. And your mantra is advance others to advance yourself, like we're talking about just now. Everyone has value, and it's just a matter of allowing others to realize that value. Can you explain how you came about, first of all, how you came about this mantra of yours, advance others to advance yourself? But also, I understand that this is revolving around content curation. How does it play a crucial role in this philosophy? And do you have some examples of how it has transformed lives?
Sure thing. One of my favorite quotes of all time, but one of my favorite motivational legends of all time, the late great Zig Ziglar once said that
Zig
you can have
Ziglar.
everything in life you want if you will just help enough other people get what they want.
Wow.
And when that quote finally stuck to me, and I did some more living and reading and was in the guinea pig phase of the self help books where I was reading just about
Mm-hmm.
almost anything I could find that I felt that
Wow.
would
Wow.
help me and looked interesting, I discovered the Advancing Man philosophy, where it's all about being a person who goes into the business of helping other people and making that your business. Because, like the Zig Ziglar quote, it's really about helping enough other people get what they want out of life. When it comes to networking events, being a person who uses their two ears more than their mouth, not
Mm-hmm.
being one of those business card ninjas trying to throw them at like shurikens at people. I even went to a
Mm-hmm.
networking events once, and one guy was running late, and he dropped his bag, pulled out a stack of business cards, and was
Oh,
handing them
man.
out like he was dealing at a blackjack table. And one dude
Oh,
karate
goodness.
chop blocked one of
Oh,
them
goodness. Come
because
on, man.
he didn't really say hi first or anything.
Ah.
And I took the alternative route of just being like, hey, let me just have a conversation with them, and if they want to connect afterwards, that's a okay. And
Mhm, mhm,
in my life personally, this advancing others philosophy happened through, funny enough, through Toastmasters, where one of our fellow members, he was giving a speech, and it was a
mhm.
5 to 7 taste of his total 40-minute prepared talk
Wow.
about pitching businesses, about having
Mhm.
the right message delivered to the right person at the
Wow.
right time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
when he delivered that, he mentioned how it's going to be a presentation that's open to the public. I decided to show up at the event, which is going to be at a hotel about a good 20 minutes from my home. And I'm like,
Okay.
all right, cool. I'm not even
Okay.
working that day either, so this is
Uh-huh.
perfect. And
Uh-huh.
when I got there, I saw a Toastmasters table. I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's great to see
Okay.
that.
Uh-huh.
And the guy who was supposed to be running that table, he showed up, and I basically helped him with pitching Toastmasters to folks to learn more about the organization. It's basically
Cool.
helping folks to
Cool.
become better public speakers and
Mm-hmm.
communicators and
Wow.
leaders. And after a couple hours in before my buddy was going up to speak, we hit it off, and he was like, hey, there's an opening for this position called area director where you oversee 4 to 5 clubs in a certain part of the area. And
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, we got an opening if you're interested. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. I'm like, sounds interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
that opened a major door because the thing is, the clubs I was overseeing, they were nowhere near my home club of where I
Right.
usually
Okay.
practice and do Toastmasters at. And that's one of the
Uh-huh.
major things that'll help you to advance in life is when you change your zip code. It
Uh-huh.
may not always involve just like moving completely out of the state. Sometimes you have to really get out of your current zip code and change it when it comes to
Uh-huh.
your activities, the people that
Uh-huh.
you meet, and the things that you
Mm-hmm.
do. And when I
Mm-hmm.
did that, I was able to become a better communicator with different audiences. I wasn't bringing the Black Baptist preacher style everywhere I
Mm-hmm.
went anymore. I wasn't trying to be TD Jakes everywhere. It's just
Mm-hmm.
me
Mm-hmm.
being more of the conversational style, happy go lucky, little goofy,
Mm-hmm.
probably way goofy Dom, who is around his friends and things like that, to the forefront and being around other people.
Right.
And that was all because I discovered the philosophy of just really being a person who's seeking out to help other people. And in that process, I advanced forward and gained a new job that I didn't even have
Wow.
on my radar at all, that gave me a lot of experience and basically blew up my network because I took
Wow.
advantage of what was given to me to really get out there to change my zip code
Mm-hmm.
and to practice more and to put myself in a new sandbox.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that. I love that story, Dom. First of all, you're leaning into it. You opened up networks. You you said these opportunities started flowing on you, and that's because you refused to become a networking ninja, so to speak, right? Just throwing all that cards around. You decided to be a diplomat, so to speak. Just being there, talking to people, connecting, which is truly is the best way to network and connect with others. Now, I understand that your mantra is something that is classic, so to speak, and you're bringing a certain twist to it. I love that we need to put together, we need to advance others in order to advance ourselves. You talk about also the business of immortality, and this again plays a crucial role and surrounding around content creation. Can you elaborate what this means and how someone can start on a path of being immortal?
Great question indeed. A book I recommend probably every listener of this podcast to read, especially since it's highlighting business stories, is a book by Dr. Joe Vitale, known as The
Mm-hmm.
Seven Lost Secrets of Success. In, I believe, I'm not sure if it's the introduction or chapter one, but basically it was basically half biography, half book on really
Wow.
creating success, about
Right.
using Bruce Barton as an example. And he was this entrepreneur who was basically, shoot,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say like a Steve Jobs esque, Bill
Ooh.
Gates, like ultra millionaire, billionaire
Oh,
entrepreneur who was well known before the Great Depression in the US of A. And
very cool.
he basically had 2 books out that kind of went that were
Wow.
published but were kind of out of print for a while.
Wow.
And Joe Vitale mentioned how basically those books that he published and that he
Mm-hmm.
was able to find later and reprint later
Mm-hmm.
were a sign of immortality. Content
Huh.
creation these days is the business of immortality
That's it.
because when you, especially when it comes to a book form, especially, but
Mm-hmm.
all the other pieces around the book, like heck, a podcast. This can be basically a piece of immortality. Like,
Mm-hmm.
God forbid, like 30 years from now or 65 years from now, whatever,
Mm.
somebody could find this later and be like, man, I wasn't even alive when this was freaking shared. It's like, dude, this is freaking
Wow.
awesome.
Of course,
Like,
of
it's
course, of
still
course.
inspirational. Like,
Mm-hmm.
books like that are still inspirational. Heck, even big books like the Bible itself, Think and Grow Rich, I believe
Mm-hmm.
that book is 90 to 100 years old almost now. And
Wow.
folks are still reading it. It's still a top selling book. It's the entrepreneur's Bible in a way. And
Mm-hmm.
all because folks decide to leave a piece of themselves here
Mm-hmm.
before they leave, and long after they're gone, they still have their thoughts out there that they decided to release to the public at that time. And heck, maybe even some folks like in Napoleon Hill Foundation, where they found some old writings and old radio show and speech
Right.
recordings, like
Right.
just leaving your thoughts out for basically the world to know more about and to really grow from it. So content creation is the path to the business of immortality. And when you put it, especially in the form of a book or a podcast, you can definitely do that. And I'm an author of 4 books and counting, working on a 5th one to
Wow.
help folks become podcasters and a podcast host myself. I've interviewed over 850 authors, and
Wow.
it's through my
Wow.
show, The Going North Podcast, where I feature authors all over the globe. And that's a piece of immortality. Sad to say, 3 people that guested on my show have passed away, and
Oh,
they
I'm so
weren't
sorry.
like big. Some of them weren't like big famous people, but they got to share their stories out there.
That's it.
And
That's it.
heck,
That's it.
even one of them, Melody Safka, she actually was on my podcast in 2021. That was still when
Mm-hmm.
COVID was still really, really huge at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
she was promoting a virtual tour and some content on Patreon with the help of her family. And sadly, she passed away early this January of 2024. And
Damn.
just being able to capture a piece of a legendary singer like that, who was alive and well known in the US of A, if not probably the world, because she performed at Woodstock. And I believe the
Oof.
first woman to perform at Woodstock. Like,
Wow.
just being able to capture stories like that and have that on the internet, because they say what you put out on the internet is forever. And
Mm-hmm.
when folks look her up, they can say, hey, like, this guy captured some of her essence at the time when she was here. So that's what the business of immortality is all about, by
I
creating
love
your
it.
content and putting it out there.
I love it. And of course, it is the modern way of immortalizing yourself. And today we have, you know, people like you sharing that hey, you can put your content out there. Maybe in the future it'll still be up in the webs and people are going to look back and remember us, and in memory we remain immortal. I love that you have given, a platform for your guests. Actually, you talk about them right now and they feel like it feels like they're still alive and they're still here with us. It truly is a business of immortality. And you talk also about best-selling authors coming onto your show, and as a host of the podcast you promote the power of the written word, the written word on your podcast, Going North. What advice would you give to aspiring authors who want to share their stories, and where can they get started, really, when it comes to this?
Sure thing. I give 3 solid pieces. The first one is ink it when you think it. One of
Oh.
the major keys to helping to get my book done is that there was a time where I was there to write a book, and at first I didn't accept it, but after
Hmm.
talking to a friend about it and some other things happening, I accepted the challenge. And when I accepted the challenge in front of a group of 20 other people, I went home that night after the meeting was over, wrote 14 pages of raw content that became the last chapter to my first ever book, Going North: Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself.
Wow.
And that all happened from the place of inspiration where the pen was on fire. So when you're thinking, sometimes even when you're really not thinking, but you just have to get something out, heck, even voice
Yep.
recorded these
Right.
days, like recorded on your phone. Like,
Hmm.
there are so many apps and options. Like, there's really no excuse in the world to be lazy nowadays with all these wonderful options out there. Even though
Hmm.
that is kind of the built-in excuse of, hey, there's so many options out there. So
Hmm.
make sure one
Hmm.
of those options is to make
Work for
sure
you.
you invest in your
Mhm.
focus and
There you
think it
go.
when you
There.
think it and record your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, write an outline when it comes to your book, especially a nonfiction book, because
Okay.
an outline is like creating the spine of your book. So that
Okay.
way you can have a rubric of where to go. So when you ink it,
Right.
when you
Right.
think it, you create an outline of what you have. You can basically match certain thoughts to each separate point in the outline, and it's a-okay if you don't get it right the first time. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
reason why, especially back in the day, you would see some books on the 25th edition and not just college textbooks.
Mm-hmm.
And the third one would be to have an accountability buddy, I'd say. That would probably be the third one,
There
because
you
when you
go.
tell people about it, when you tell folks about your goals and your dreams, especially the right people who actually remember things and will remind you every now and then, you will
Mm-hmm.
get some things done, because one of two things are happening. You're going to hear them remind you forever of that thing that you didn't do, and you'll be like, darn, like,
Ah,
ah, man, I
yeah.
suck. Or you're going to use that fire to actually get it
Yes.
done and be like, yeah, I finally did
Yes.
it. Now they can stop asking me about it.
Either way, it works, right? Accountability, having that someone in your ear, someone on your shoulder telling you, like, you didn't do it. If even if you feel bad about it, even if you don't, even either way, it's nice to have that someone on your side. Is they're on your team? They're all there for you and making sure that you follow through. And I love those three advices for any aspiring author. Think about it, ink it, just write it down, just put a brain dump, so to speak, and then have an outline, an accountability buddy. I love that. Dom, there's been a lot of obstacles, of course, when it comes to um, putting together, when it comes to inspiring authors as well, you inspiring them as well, and encouraging them, getting them to publish their own books. What has been the most challenging obstacle in your journey towards not just inspiring authors, but also inspiring others? And what was the most common challenge, and how did you help them overcome it?
Oh, yeah. I'd have to say fear is probably one of the biggest things that holds people
That's it.
back
Mm-hmm.
from success, because there's two sides of fear mostly: fear of failure, which is common, and then there's the other fear that's probably getting a little more publicity, which is the fear of success. It's like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
what if I become too big? And it's like everybody's going to be following me and I can't go to a regular public bathroom anymore. Like, it's like, like there's two sides of the same
Mm-hmm.
coin of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, sometimes heck, one of those causes of that fear can be imposter syndrome, where
Yes.
you may jump into the wonderful black hole of social media
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, oh man, all these people are doing these great things and they got these
Mm-hmm.
followings of people, even though some of those followers might have been bought or whatever. The engagement might have been bought by some bots or whatever. And it's like, dude, it's a-okay. I actually had to deal with that with my second book, which, funny enough, was more difficult to write than my first book, because the first book I had a deadline and I didn't know
Right.
what the heck I was doing. So I had an
Mm-hmm.
advantage. I have the beginner's mind advantage.
Mm-hmm.
After the first book was done, I basically had an advantage of, all right, I know what to do now. I have the roadmap.
Right.
This would be a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I started the podcast in between book one and book two, and I talked
Ooh.
with authors with way bigger followings than me at the time and way more stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was feeling a little self
A
conscious
little bit.
when I was
Mm-hmm.
looking back, and it
Mm-hmm.
was holding me back. And one of the major things is that I used some inspiration, at least one of the things that helped me get over the inspiration, from an ancient book called the Bible, where the wonderful Jesus Christ mentioned in one of his Gospels that, hey, to his disciples, you're going to do greater works than me. And probably his favorite disciple, in terms of the one that's mentioned the most, Peter, he did greater works than Christ on the day of Pentecost when it came to those thousands of souls being saved that day and being transformed. So just the thought of, hey, even though I may have a message that sounds similar to someone else, even though I may think that person who has a bigger following than me has a bigger impact than me on paper, even though I feel like, hey, why do I need to put my work out there, you have to realize, hey, there's going to be someone out there that only you can reach. No matter how many times someone may market or put themselves out there, they still may need to hear you first or see you in action first before they take action. Six folks
Oh,
became published authors after seeing me in action,
wow,
which
let's go.
was an unforeseen, honorable gift that I didn't
Mm-hmm.
see coming. I was just going to write the book to write the book and see what would happen, maybe sell a few
Mm-hmm.
copies or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
folks said they saw me in action. They're like, dude, this dude in his early 20s has got a published book, and I'm like in my
Wow.
60s and have all this life experience, and I can't even put one book out there. Let me get
Wow.
myself to work in action here.
Mm-hmm.
And that action is the inspiration. So when it comes to dealing with that coin of fear, the fear of success, the fear of failure, you just have to set it aside and focus on taking action, because your action today can be someone's inspiration tomorrow.
I love that. I love that. And this kind of goes back also to content creation, right? When you're thinking like, maybe the content I'm putting out there is not going to be good enough. But the thing is, you just need to put it out there. Just put it out there, and eventually you start improving on it, start getting better on it. Of course, the endeavor is much more bigger. The pressure is much more bigger when you're starting to talk to these people in your experience again, who's like bigger following, more success or achievement than you have. But it really starts with putting yourself out there. I love that you were validated because six guests became published authors eventually after being on your show and after being, going through you as a inspirer. And I love that. I love that story, Dom. And I think it really it really speaks to your mantra. It circles back to your mantra of advancing others so you can advance yourself. And you are here right now today joining us. Dom, if there was one brief message that you would leave behind right now for our listeners, of course, you have your mantra, you have those three tips for authors already, and helping authors overcome their fear. You have had such a diverse career also. What message would you leave to our audience and our listeners across the globe when it comes to starting, when it comes to, starting with, with nothing, no thoughts, starting with just an idea? I know this is something that you've dealt with a lot of individuals. What would that message be, Dom?
I'd have to say, take action today so you can tell a good story tomorrow.
Oh, let's go. I love that. Take action today so you can take as good, even if the action fails, right? Because then that's
Hmm.
still a story to make. There's still a story to learn from. And by the way, I want to add, like, if you're telling these stories, you're actually inspiring others to tell the same, to tell their own stories. So by telling your story, you're actually advancing others as well. You're doing a disservice to yourself and to others by not telling your story. I love that. I love that. Even if it's a mistake, even if it's an error, just take action, even if it's not perfect. Dom, you are the perfect, guest, especially for this topic today. I love your insights. I'd love to give you this opportunity. Where can we connect with you? Where can we learn more about Dom Brightmon and what you do? And of course, you know, Going North podcast. I invite our audience and listeners to subscribe to that. Where can we find you?
Thanks so much, Joshua. I appreciate you, my man. Like, everything is branded easy. Dom Brightmon. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all at Dom Brightmon. And you can find all things Dom on dombrightmon.com.
All right, fantastic. DomBrightmon.com. Check him out on all the socials out there. Of course, the Going North podcast. I will check that out myself. And everyone who is aspiring to start now to be an author and to be, basically to also put themselves out there and immortalize yourself, like Dom has shared with us today. Dom, thank you so much for the energy. Thank you so much for the insights and all that perspective. Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, thanks again for having me, Josh. You the man, baby.
You the man, are you the man, Dom? Thank you so much. And to all our audience listeners out there, stay inspired. Start it today. Think it when you think it. Take action. So you can tell a story tomorrow. Dom, thank you so much. See you on the next one.
All right, so here's the thing. We try to get a little bit better every day. but we can't do it without you. So if you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe below. And if you have any comments, just leave them in the space under.